Ever picture yourself leading a school? Not just teaching, but actually being the one in charge, shaping the whole thing. We're diving deep into what it really takes to be a secondary school head teacher, going way beyond the usual job description stuff.
That's right. We're talking about getting into the nitty-gritty, the real story, using some super insightful info from RoleCatcher. They're like, I don't know, career guides on steroids, helping you navigate every single step of the way.
And you know what? We're not just talking about managing schedules and giving speeches at assemblies. This is about orchestrating a whole learning experience, making sure the curriculum checks all the boxes, meets national standards, but also making sure every student and teacher feel supported and empowered.
It's really interesting, actually. RoleCatcher dives into this whole thing about the national curriculum framework. It's like the bedrock, the foundation for head teachers.
Yeah.
Because it's not just about knowing the subjects themselves. It's about understanding how they all fit together to create a well-rounded and enriching education.
So it's less about being a master of every subject and more about being a master strategist. That's interesting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. RoleCatcher really emphasizes that strategic thinking. Think about it. You're mapping out a whole school improvement plan. You're pinpointing areas that need attention, and then figuring out how to use the school's resources in a way that actually gets results. That's what a head teacher's doing every single day. But there's a lot more to it, too.
Okay, now I'm intrigued. What else does RoleCatcher bring to the table?
Well, one thing they do really well is unpack the crazy diverse skill set that you need for this. Of course, knowing a lot about education is a given, but you also need things like financial management skills. And psychology, super important.
Psychology? Really? I mean, I guess I can see how working with teenagers would require some psychology know-how.
Totally. And that's where RoleCatcher gets even more interesting. They talk about how understanding things like cognitive development, it actually helps head teachers be more effective communicators. Like if they're dealing with a discipline issue or they need to motivate a teacher who's feeling burnt out, it's all about meeting people where they're at, connecting with them on their level.
So it's not just what you know, it's how you connect with people.
Absolutely. And don't forget, a head teacher is a leader, a mentor, a diplomat. They're wearing all these different hats. They're constantly interacting with all sorts of people, students, teachers, parents, you name it, even people from the local community. It's about building those relationships and creating a sense of community.
It sounds like you need to strike a balance, right, between being in charge, but also being empathetic and understanding.
Exactly. You hit the nail on the head. RoleCatcher does a great job at painting this picture of a leader who's not just authoritative, but approachable too. Someone who can navigate all those sticky situations with a good mix of firmness and compassion.
And when we talk about navigating, I mean, you mentioned sticky situations. I'm curious, what are some of the challenges that come with a job like this? I mean, it can't be easy, right?
Oh, you're totally right. There are definitely some bumps in the road. RoleCatcher doesn't shy away from that at all. They talk about the long hours, the tough decisions you have to make, and the constant pressure to balance, well, everything. You're leading a school, but then there's also a ton of administrative stuff that comes with it.
It sounds like you really need to be resilient and able to handle problems, think on your feet.
Absolutely. But here's the thing. RoleCatcher has a really interesting way of looking at it. They don't just present the challenges as negatives. They actually frame them as opportunities for growth. So let's say you've got a really complicated disciplinary issue, or you're trying to manage a team with, different personalities, different needs. Those experiences, as tough as they are, they actually make you a better leader in the long run. They force you to make those tough calls, but to do it fairly.
Right. So it's like they say, what doesn't break you makes you stronger. Or in this case, it makes you a head teacher.
Yeah, exactly. And speaking of becoming a head teacher, that whole journey is another thing that RoleCatcher does a fantastic job of laying out. They map out a career ladder, all the steps you might take to get the experience and the skills you need to lead a school.
So it's less about like jumping straight into the deep end and more about strategically working your way up. Where does it usually start? I mean, what's the first rung on that ladder?
Well, usually it starts with the basics, right? Entry-level teacher or a subject teacher. You're getting really good at what you teach, figuring out how to manage a classroom effectively. But it's also about seeing the bigger picture, how everything in the school works together.
Right, getting that foundational experience. Okay, so you start there. What's the next step up?
Becoming a department head is a pretty natural progression. You're leading a team of teachers now, you're coordinating the curriculum for your subject, and you're starting to get a taste of leadership, right? You're mentoring your colleagues, helping them grow.
It sounds like a really good mix of still being hands-on with teaching, but also stepping into that more strategic role. I imagine that's good preparation for becoming a deputy head.
Exactly. As a deputy head, you're basically the head teacher's right-hand person. You're more involved in the overall running of the school, you're dealing with more complex issues, and really taking on more of that leadership responsibility.
So it's like an apprenticeship for the top job. But I'm curious, once you reach that head teacher level, is that it? Or are there other paths you can take from there?
Well, the cool thing is, it's not always linear. RoleCatcher highlights all these different options for experienced head teachers. Like you could become a senior education administrator. You'd be overseeing multiple schools, working on education policy at a much larger scale.
Wow, so you go from shaping young minds to shaping the whole education system. That's
I
amazing.
know, right? And it doesn't even stop there. RoleCatcher talks about how some head teachers go into consulting. They use all that experience they've built up to help other schools or maybe educational organizations.
So it's not even really a ladder, it's more like what's that game? Choose your own adventure, but for education.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
And the best part is, RoleCatcher provides the map and the compass for that adventure. They don't just describe these roles, they actually give you the tools you need to get there.
Speaking of tools, one thing that really stood out to me in the RoleCatcher guide was the section on interview prep. They had some really interesting sample questions for aspiring head teachers. Questions that really make you think beyond just like, tell me about your teaching experience.
Oh, yeah, for sure. To land a job like this, you need more than just a great track record in the classroom. They want to know how you think strategically, how you handle pressure, how you inspire people. RoleCatcher's questions really get at those deeper qualities.
I remember one example, something like, how do you plan to engage with parents and other people in the community? It really makes you stop and think about that bigger picture.
Right. And that's the point, isn't it? It highlights this crucial part of the job that often gets overlooked. It's not just what happens inside the school building. It's about building those bridges with the community, creating that sense of partnership.
It's true. A head teacher isn't just running the school, they're like a killer of the whole community.
You got it. It's like they're a link between the school, parents, local businesses, even people in the government. They're creating this whole support system that goes way beyond the classroom.
It really shows you how many different roles a head teacher has to play, and that's something I really like about RoleCatcher. They don't just tell you how to get the job, they really show you all the layers of the whole career. It's impressive.
Yeah, and they don't stop at those interview questions either. They've got all these tools to help you come up with really good answers, highlight your skills, even connect with potential employers. It's like having your own personal career assistant right in your pocket.
Exactly, like a mentor who's always there to guide you.
That's a perfect way to put it. And when it comes down to it, that's what makes this RoleCatcher guide so valuable.
Yeah.
It's not just about filling some empty position. It's about finding a place where you could actually make a real impact. A job where your love for education rubs off on everyone around you.
It really does sound like, you know, it's tough, but it's also incredibly rewarding. If you're someone who loves to lead and you're passionate about education, becoming a head teacher could be an amazing path. It could be the perfect thing.
And, the RoleCatcher guide, they emphasize that over and over, the impact you can have.
Yeah.
And not just on the students, on everyone. The teachers, the whole school community. It's about creating that love of learning that goes beyond, just memorizing facts and passing tests.
So I guess what RoleCatcher is really asking is, what mark do you want to leave on the world of education? What kind of impact do you want to have?
It's a big question. But it's a good one, right? It's something to think about. Whether you're just starting out in your career or you're looking for something more, we need more passionate, dedicated leaders in education, and becoming a head teacher could be the way to go.
I couldn't agree more. This has been great. Thanks for going on this deep dive with me. I feel like I learned a lot.
The pleasure was all mine, honestly.
Yeah.
These deep dives are always so fascinating.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And to everyone listening, thank you so much for joining us on the deep dive. We'll be back soon with another deep dive into a whole new career path. Until then, keep exploring.